Ready to take back off?
Yes. Okay. So I did end up, like I said, going or having a home health care agency come in and they did therapy for me. But the guy actually had to research on what to do for it since it was in the cerebellum and it was a lot to do with the equilibrium and balance in your
So
brain.
fairly unique situation.
Yes. And so he looked it up. And so what he came up with was basically going through the infant's life stages and developments and re-mimicking them to rewire those areas in your brain is
That's
what
what
he
you were
told me.
doing.
Yes. So he would have me roll back and forth.
It sounds so
Yeah.
silly.
Yes. So he'd have me roll back and forth. But it actually was dizzying for me to roll back and forth.
You bet.
Because I didn't have any perception of like really where I was. Like if I were to close my eyes, it was all black. Have you ever seen Stranger Things?
Yes.
Okay, so you know
Absolutely.
when when she's in the black abyss,
Mm-hmm.
except for like without water and everything, she's just in a black abyss and she can't see anything.
That's freaking scary.
So when you close your eyes, it was all
Yeah.
black. And then sometimes I would have, whenever I'd close my eyes and I was trying to go to sleep,
Mhm.
I'd have a sensation of me just floating in space and just like rolling. I was dizzy,
Oh my god.
but everything was black.
How
And
do you
then
not go nuts?
yes, and then like whenever I would go to bed, I'd be like, all right, I'm gonna go to sleep. And I would lay my head down, close my eyes, I was asleep. That was it. Like there was no process to going to sleep. I would just tell my brain I needed to sleep and it was done. And I feel like it was probably because I, needed the sleep to recover. The brain needs a lot of sleep to recover. So I did that, and then for the first few months I had a lot of like, whenever you're the falling dreams where you feel like you're falling and then you just kind of jump up.
Yeah.
Every freaking night.
You jerking yourself awake
every
night?
Every single night.
It's a bad feeling too.
Yes. For like months. Every single night was just like me jumping up. And I had read, which I don't know the scientific part of this or anything, but I had read that it was like, normal. So I was like, okay, well, that's good. But yeah, and so we went through that. Then he was talking about like I would get on like all fours like a child would, and then I would just like kind of rock back and forth.
I shouldn't laugh at all.
No, it's kind of silly. It's kind of funny. I mean, if you can't laugh about it, you know
exactly.
what I mean?
You kind of have to laugh
you're
about
gonna
it, or
be
it's just going
depressed
to be shitty for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's gonna be all depressed and awkward. Like, yeah. No, I get it. And so I kind of like rock back and forth. So that was weird. A little old man. He was super cool. And I slowly got better, and then I was walking with my walker, and then I was able to transition to a cane, like a 4-point cane. Or no, I think it was a single point cane. And so I was with a cane, and everything was so much better. But I did notice I had a lot of sensory overstimulation. And one of the ways that I realized that was I was going to shave my dog because he's a Cocker Spaniel, so he's very, very fluffy. And so I was like, man, this poor guy's looking ratchet out here because I haven't shaved him because I've been sick.
Boy needs a haircut.
Yes, and so I was like, poor baby. So I get him, and then I turned on the clippers, and the clippers, I don't know if you ever use clippers, but it almost kind of vibrates.
I have.
Okay, it kind of vibrates, okay?
Yeah.
That feeling was like all in my arm, and then it was just like, it felt like my whole body was vibrating.
Sensory issues?
Yeah, it felt like my whole body was vibrating, and then I was like, and then I had to turn them off, and I was just like, felt shaky, and I was just like, I think I was completely overstimulated.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I can't do that. I had to pay for somebody else to get them groomed because I was like, I can't do that. I did not expect that whatsoever. And it was just like sensory overload.
Does any of that stuff ever linger still?
Yes, sometimes. I could always, like, if I don't drink enough water, I can tell. On summer days when it's very, very hot, I have to make sure to stay hydrated.
Too much bourbon?
Bourbon?
Too much bourbon?
No. Well, no, not really. I mean, not more than anything else. And I try not to drink to a point where I'm actually like messed up.
I don't think I've ever seen you have more than one drink.
Yeah.
You've got a pretty good hold on it. Yeah, 2 max.
It's not fun for me to get drunk because then I'm like, it literally felt like I was drunk whenever I was having my stroke. So it's like,
I don't like PTSD from it. Like you don't want to get drunk again.
Yeah, exactly.
You probably want the buzz and the kind of like chill and lack of anxiety, but the whole imbalance feeling and just not being in control is probably still very scary for you.
I'm good. Yeah. I don't want to do that. So I did physical therapy with that, and then I pretty much graduated out of that. So I was like, yeah, I'm over here with just a cane, and I only use the cane every once in a while. but I was still having a little bit of issues with my balance because I had a 2-story house, and so it had this huge walkway at the top. So it was literally a drop off on both sides. It was just a walkway, and you would look down one side or the other side, and I felt like I was just going to fall over. So I couldn't even go
to the earth, like you're about to fall off of it.
So I couldn't even go upstairs.
Yeah.
So I was just like, what's the point? You know? And so.
So did you try to just stay downstairs the whole time?
Yeah, I just stayed downstairs.
Do you like sleep down there and everything?
Yeah, all the rooms and everything. Well, most of them were downstairs, gotcha. So that was all we really needed.
Yeah. And
my kiddo slept with me, so it was fine. Or in my room. And then I ended up finally being able to drive. It's a funny story. The first time I decided to drive, I was so frustrated, and I was like, I can do things by myself, you know. I remember we had talked about like doing disability, and I was like, I just graduated with my nursing degree. No, I refuse to be on disability.
Good for you.
I refuse to say this is it. Like, no, I worked hard for this, and I'm going to get back. You know, they're like, but you know, well, we'll see. You know, and so one day I was in my house, and I was like, I'm tired of this freaking house. I'm tired of being in here. My kiddo was at school, and I was just like, I'm gonna freaking drive. I'm gonna drive. So I get in my Hyundai, which is the one I actually had my stroke in, so I kind of was like creeped out by it.
I bet.
But I got in my Hyundai.
Some bad juju in there.
Yes. I just felt like it came back to me. You know what I mean? But I got into it, and I was like, I'm going down the street to my parents' house, and so I got in, turned it on, and I put it in reverse. I went to back up. Scraped it all along the side of my garage door.
So that's the first time you ran into something.
Today
was the second.
Okay,
you had a good excuse.
Let's not talk about that today.
You had a good excuse.
Let me tell my parents first. But yes,
they won't know for like 5 days.
It's okay. We're good. I mean, either way, I'm the one that's paying for it. Whatever.
Yeah.
Like a child over here worried about getting scolded, but I'm like, oh, whatever.
They'll give you shit. But
yeah, they will. They'll roast me. But I scraped the car all alongside the garage, and then
good excuse again.
My husband at the time comes down and was like, "What happened?" I was like, "I was mad," and I was like, "I'm gonna drive," because he didn't want to drive me where I needed to go. So I was like, "I'm gonna drive."
He didn't want to drive you? What was he doing?
No, I don't know what it was. I just remember I was pissed, and I was like, "You know what? I can do it myself. I'm an independent woman." And then I got in, and I just scraped the side of the car. But nothing was broken. It was fine. And I was just like, it wasn't a super expensive car. So I was just like, all right, we're good, you know. And
did you end up finishing the drive that day?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You went and did what you needed to do.
Yeah, I went straight, you know, like got it out of there and then kind of realigned back. And then I was just like, all right, I'm good.
At least you had some land to drive around on, like a test drive, like a practice run a little bit.
Yeah, I had like a huge driveway. That was like a big old circle. So I would, you know, I did a test drive or two around there and then took off. My parents' house was right down the road, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But it was really scary for me to drive because the perception of the people driving beside you is very, very different. Like, I still struggle even to this day. Like, if I go to Dallas or anywhere and they have those big old loops, seeing all those other cars going different directions, it's like it can mess with me, you know?
Yeah.
It can almost like confuse me.
Like the mix masters and what do they call them? Roundabouts?
Yeah.
Those bother you?
Yes,
those are stressful for
or any kind of elevation.
Who haven't had issues. Yeah, so the Mixmaster, you're turning and going on this huge bridge that's 200 feet above everything else.
And then seeing the other cars, it's an overstimulation, and I just can't. So I just try to avoid those areas. So I'm like, I'll just drive extra and go around it or whatever, you know. Yeah. Like, it's not a big deal. So I do drive, like in Dallas and in Austin, but I try not to go in those places where all that's going on, because I still have issues with it. And then
so does it ever just freak you out? How do you cope with that? You just talk yourself through it?
Yeah, pretty much. At one time I had to drive, and it was at night, and so I was having astigmatism, and there was just like lots of lights, and we were
astigmatism sucks.
Yeah,
there's no way to really fix it.
Yes,
I have it too.
Lines everywhere.
Glasses are a lot better than contacts. So even the contacts with the correction, I can't hardly wear contacts at night and drive. It's still terrible.
Well, everybody I was with was drunk, so I was like, I'm the only option. So I'm like, we're gonna get
us
out of here.
You're safer than they are, even with your blurry halos.
By the time we get out of Dallas, you know, my sister and her friend, I told her, I was just like, hey guys, I got something to tell you guys. And they're like, what? I'm like, you know how it is in Mario Kart where you see the rainbow road.
Yeah.
And you don't know whether you're about to fall off or not. And there's a lot going on. And you're like, I don't know where I'm going. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, that's how that drive was for me. I was like, I'm surprised we survived. And they're like, what the heck? Why didn't you tell us?
Yeah.
And I'm like, y'all are both plastered. Y'all can't even walk, much less drive. I was our only hope. And I'm telling you now that we're safe.
You have no parachute if you run off that bridge.
I know. I was just like, oh, it was scary. I was just like the whole time freaking out. They had no idea. They were having a good time. And I was just like, Lord Jesus, it's me again, you know? So we made it, so it's fine, you know. But I tell them like, no, we're gonna Uber, especially if there's any drinking involved. I'll Uber. It's fine.
Dallas is cool. So you go downtown?
I don't remember where we went. We went to a big quince, and I don't remember where it was at. I can't recall. So couldn't tell you. Yeah. It's been a long time.
You ever do like Sunset Square, Fort Worth down there?
Yeah, I've gone there.
It's cool too. Yeah, water gardens.
Yes.
All that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep, it's a cool area.
Yeah, it's like Fort Worth. I think we were closer to like maybe I want to say Arlington. Area.
Just in between.
Yeah.
To live over there for a while. Arlington's a cool place.
Yeah, so I want to say it was around there, but like I said, I can't really even remember. It's been a few years. But yeah, and then after I did the home health thing, I graduated from that, and I was able to drive again. I started doing physical therapy because I was still having those like symptoms. They weren't as bad, but they're the same symptoms I had in my stroke, just not as bad. And so I did kind of like, I'll feel flush, and then it would happen, and it would only last for a few seconds, and then it was gone, and it was fine. But since I was still having those symptoms and I still had issues with that driving part, I was like, you know what, I'm going to go get some more physical therapy that's a little bit more geared towards vestibular therapy. And so they recommended that I go to Abilene for that. And so I had sessions twice a week to go to Abilene. So I would drive to Abilene twice a week, do therapy. And then it was crazy because the first time that she told me, like in my evaluation, she had me stand in one place and she said, okay, close your eyes. I was like, okay. And she's like, now you're going to, you know, I was standing up and she's like, now you're going to march. And I was like, okay, march, you know, like whatever.
Embarrassing.
Yeah, I was like, okay, that was in my
no worse than crawling on the floor though, right?
Yeah, exactly. In my mind, I was like, this is silly, you know? So I closed my eyes. Of course, everything was black, you know? And then I was marching. And then she's like, okay, open your eyes. And I opened my eyes. I had gone all the way across the room.
When you thought you were marching in place?
Yes, had almost ran into something. That's why she told me to stop. I had gone across the room and I had not even felt it. I did not perceive it. I did not know. There was no perception of what was going on around me. And like when I closed my eyes, like whenever you close your eyes normally, I remember before this happened, whenever I'd look at a room, I'd close my eyes and I'd be able to remember where everything is. Now, no. Now I've gotten better. Like I've trained my brain a little bit more since then.
I was going to ask you about that. If there's anything lingering that you still have.
Like I can, you know, look at that and then I like take like a mental picture of it. And when I close my eyes, I can imagine.
So it's more photographic than just naturally not having to think about it.
Yeah.
Before that, this happens to me and I'm just curious. So like if I look at that wall and I close my eyes, I can still picture like the paintings and the pictures, just at least a rectangle and almost like a negative of it. Did you have that before? Is that normal?
Yes, I was able to, you know, perceive all that. Yes.
So now you have to kind of work at it. Is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I felt like even before, like you could almost like walk in here if all the lights were out and you could kind of know where everything's at. Yeah. I didn't have a sense of that at all.
It's like almost like echolocation, but
yeah, it's like, you know? It's like I was lost. And then because of that issue with my brain, my ability to balance and all that really became focused on my eyes. So my eyes, it's like my brain really emphasized on my eyes and it depended on it. So
as opposed to like equilibrium, probably.
Yeah. So anytime I closed my eyes, I was done, dead in the water, done. And so I was very glad that I was seeking out treatment over there because through time I was able to do it and actually march in place. Like something as silly as marching in place and not going all over the place was a huge accomplishment for me. And then also they had like these screens, which it reminds me of like Fruit Ninja or something, but like all these balls bouncing all over the place and then you'd like try to touch them.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. That's silly. just doing stuff like that, it helped me tremendously.
So would you close your eyes before and then open them and just be off balance completely? Like, is the room spinning or what?
It
What
wouldn't
happened?
spin.
Yeah.
If I was having an episode, it would spin. But
Okay.
if I wasn't, then it was just, it just felt like I was in a black room by myself
Back to Stranger Things
with
stuff.
no way of knowing
Yeah.
where or what was there. Like in a completely different world.
Was it weird for you watching Stranger Things after that and seeing Elle?
Yeah, it's like
Just you're like, hey, I experienced this too.
yes, it's like it's so eerie,
Mhm.
you know. And I was just like, oh my god, that's exactly what it feels like. This black and this dark abyss. And now I mean, I don't have like the dreams where I feel like I'm like tumbling in black space. Like I don't have those kind of dreams or have that feeling as much anymore. Like now, as the years have progressed, all those symptoms got better, like the doctor said that they would. So he really knew his stuff, and I love that guy.
What's your follow-up like now? Do you ever see him again? Are you local?
I don't technically have to see him again. He had already told me that I didn't require any surgery, but he still saw me 2 times after that, just because I had a lot of questions. And he was a very, very good doctor. And
good for him.
Even one time whenever I was at the Hendricks Hospital, because my vision was having some issues, and I didn't know why, because sometimes I'll have issues with my peripheral vision.
Mhm.
Like it's even my peripheral vision, I can see like the numbers that they're holding up, but it's not the same as before. Before I could see it clear as day. Now I just see kind of like if you put your hand up there, I can't see every detail on it. I can just see what looks like a cloud of like 3, 4, you know, however many fingers. And that's how they use to tell if you have peripheral vision, like how many fingers am I holding up, you know?
Yeah.
And I can't see as far back as I used to.
Isn't one side more than the other? Is it your right side you can see more?
Well, the brain works. So the vertebral artery dissection was on the right-hand side. So it affects the opposite side. So the left side is the one affected.
That's so weird.
Yeah, because that's how it works for the brain. And so a lot of my symptoms were on this side.
Because the right side was damaged.
Yes. And then like having a fan blow on me really bothers me. Because that whole part, like it's, I guess, just feeling cold, like feeling that cold wind on you.
So all no of a sudden, ceiling fans?
Yeah. So all of a sudden, my whole arm will feel cold. It's like a sensory thing, and then I just start freaking out because it's just like that flush feeling again from
so
when
don't
it
go
first
turn
happened.
that on, is what you're saying.
Yeah, so
I don't like them anyway. It drives me nuts too.
So I don't have fans or anything like that, and even in my vehicle, I usually have the AC or whatever off. Unless it's like super hot or cold.
You're not one of those freaks that has to sleep with the freaking fan noise.
No, I don't.
That drives me nuts. I can't hear anything around me. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, as time has gone by, I've gotten so much better. I graduated out of that therapy. I was able to get another job. I was very frustrated whenever I was trying to get back into working because whenever I would apply, I was very transparent about what had happened.
And you didn't have to be. They didn't have to know any of that.
Yeah. And I was just like, for medical reasons, you know, is what I put on there. And
of course, you had the gap probably.
Yeah,
how long was the gap between when it happened?
I was only out for a year, and I had to go back.
So you had to kind of explain that, but But moms at the same time kind of have that sometimes anyway.
Yeah, and so I did give an explanation. I was transparent about what happened, and I wasn't getting the jobs that I wanted. So what I found out was I'm just not going to say anything about it. And then if they ask, I'll just be like, well, it's a mom wanting to spend time with my kid, which is not a lie either. They're not
supposed to ask, but
Yeah, and I got hired right away. So
made a big difference in it.
Yes, and so I had a friend. She was like, well, it's no big deal. Like, they're not supposed to ask about stuff like that or, whatever. And I'm just like, yeah, but they do. And,
But if you tell them, then they're probably going to hold it against you.
Yes.
Seems like.
Yes. And I'm like, and I like to be honest, but at that point, I was just like, it really doesn't matter. And then I felt like I had so many deficits that one of them, I was just like, what if I'm not as just like quick thinking as I used to be, So I did get back into school because I had to prove that to myself. And so I went back and I started taking college courses again.
So you started back towards BSN?
Yeah. I'm taking like a lot of their leadership roles and everything, and I've done really, really well in all those classes. So that helps to prove to me that I'm still capable of doing all these things and thinking, in a critical way, and that hasn't been affected. And I feel like a lot of people do have a stigma that, oh, you've had a stroke. Well, there's deficits there. You're not as smart as somebody else.
Unless you told me, I would have had no idea. Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't like.
Some people are
I
like,
think
"Why
you're one
do
of the
you?"
smartest people I talk to. Honestly,
Some people are
I
like,
think
"Why
you're
do
one of the
you?"
smartest people I talk to. Honestly,
Thank you.
yeah.
And some people tell me like, "Why do you tell people?" And I'm like, "Because it can happen to anybody.
Hmm.
It
Just
can
awareness.
happen
You're
to
trying to
anybody."
educate them.
Yes, and it's like no one is immune to this. Like
Mm.
shortly after I had my stroke, there was somebody else that was in his 30s that had a stroke and passed away. Then there was a woman
So sad.
in
So young.
her, I want to say she was early 40s, late 30s, and she passed away. And that was a hemorrhagic one. And it's like you think you're immune to it, but you're not. I'm like,
Nobody
that's
is.
3 in the community that are
Yeah.
just, and I'm like, and I know there's more because people have told me more stories, like the chiropractic ones. Like I didn't
That's
know
one
those
I
people
didn't know.
personally, but there was 2
Yeah.
cases that were chiropractic related, and I'm like, that's alarming.
I go to the chiropractor a lot. Like I feel like it's really helped my spine. I have 5 slip disc, but I get massage therapy too. So it's like the mixture of those two helps a lot. So which one is it? Which one's really helping? But I never knew any of that. I didn't know there's that risk of going. And there's a lot of people I know that work in the medical community that are scared of it too. And then people swear by it, and there's some science behind it too. So
Yeah,
I think it's in your situation you probably wouldn't want to, but like now I'm like, next time I get my neck popped, am I gonna be scared? It is a pretty abrupt pop too. It's
Yeah,
straight.
it's
It's
okay.
right by your
Yeah.
ears, and you hear it. Like I remember my daughter went after the accident a couple times, and it terrified her. Now she's good, but it makes sense where it would potentially cause issues. I'm guessing those are statistically anomalies.
Yeah,
If
they
that
don't happen
happens,
very often at
yeah.
all. But strokes in general are pretty common.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's like the 3rd leading cause of death. So,
I'm surprised to hear that happens to people so young too.
yes, and I've had several people reach out to me that know I've had a stroke, that I've known I have had one because they have somebody in their life that has had one, and they're all in their 30s, early 40s. And now with COVID, a lot of people have had strokes because there's a lot of blood clotting disorders that are coming along with it.
Yeah.
And I mean, if we can save anybody just by educating on it, that's amazing.
Is it more prevalent in men or women, or does it seem to matter? Is there any statistics there that you're aware of?
Not that I know of. I know estrogen can cause increasing like blood clotting.
Which men have that too. Sometimes men have too much of it.
Yeah, so that could be a factor in it. But more than anything, it's going to be things like having diabetes, having uncontrolled blood pressure, obesity. Those are the things. And then, of course, having any kind of undiagnosed blood clotting disorder, which most people don't undergo blood clotting.
Why don't they test that in your annual checkup when you do blood work?
Because it's not very common, and so they're like, oh, you'll be fine.
But still, again, if the patient is paying an extra $25 out of $300 to have all the blood work done, like just do it.
Depending on what it is, some of them can be very, very pricey. But at that point in my life, I was like willing to pay it. But I mean, she wouldn't even hear me. She wouldn't even order them, and was just like, "You're fine,"
Yeah.
And so it just was being condescending, and I was just like, "Okay, well." And I did want to go back and be like, "Yeah, you told me that I didn't have one. I did, and I came to you, and you didn't do what I asked you to, and look what happened."
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess it doesn't matter. We're gonna do what they're gonna do. So.
What's your time restriction? It's 3:40.
Yeah, I gotta go. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll
All
cut
right,
it off.
Yeah.
I didn't want to run you too far over.